Before I begin my lecture, I'd like to give you some tips for understanding the coat paintings and then related facts. The who's who is always difficult. So King Jeongjo and then his son, Crown Prince Sado, but King Jeongjo killed Crown Prince Sado, his own son. That's a tragedy. And then, so Jeongjo is a grandchild, and Sunjo and his son, Crown Prince Hyomyeong, and then so Hunjong is the grandchild of Sunjo, and King Gojong and Sunjong. And also the map of the capital city, and you can see over here several palaces. And then in the north central palace, Gyeongbok Palace, it was destroyed during the Japanese invasion of Korea, 1592 to 98. And the western palace is called the Gyeonghee Palace, and eastern palace is two palaces that are combined together, Changdeok and Changgyeong. So the Changdeok Palace is widely known to us as Secret Garden. And coat painters, S is missing. Coat painters never signed their works for the court, while Chinese and Japanese coat painters did. This is a very important fact. After the fall of the Southern Song, there exists no painting academy institutionally until 1736 when the Emperor Chennong re-established it. So, whereas Korean Bureau of Painting continued. And court painters belonged to the Jungin class, that is middle people between Yangban and commoners, doctors, interpreters, musicians, and mathematicians, petty clerks, and so forth. Let me begin my lecture. The late Joseon period witnessed a large production of court paintings. Within the palace, many paintings were utilized primarily to meet the symbolic and ritual needs of the king and his family in official and private life. At the center of the massive production of court-sponsored paintings were painters at the Bureau of Painting. They created numerous paintings documenting court rituals, ceremonies, and important government projects, completion ceremonies, palace banquets, royal processions, and birthday celebrations for major members of the royal family are vividly portrayed in court paintings that provide magnificent pictorial echoes of the pomp and pageantry of court life. The folding screen was the major format of Joseon court painting. The folding screens on monumental scale and in exquisite detail show the lavish grandeur of court life as seen in the birthday banquets for Grand Queen Dowager Sunwon screen, depicting the official celebration at Injong Hall of Virtuous Rule, the throne hall of Changdeok Palace, and the day and evening banquets at Tongmyong Hall, a hall of everlasting brightness. The screen is a pictorial record of banquets and ceremonies for celebrating the 60th birthday of Grand Queen Dowager. So this 60th means in Korean reckoning. So in Western reckoning, that's the 59th birthday. But I'd like to follow the Korean way. So 60th means 59th anyway. The most powerful woman at court in 1848, the careful records of these special events were later published as an illustrated book called Eugye, detailing all the preparations for and procedures of the court-sponsored banquets and ceremonies. Court painters also made preparatory sketches for wood blocks. Multiple copies of each Eugye were created. The best copy for the king, the others for government offices, such as the Board of Lights and the 4 history archives. You can see it. The year 1829 marked King Sunjo's 40th birthday and 30th year of his reign. Crown Prince Hyomyoung, the father of King Hunjong, then the Prince Regent, ruling the country on Sunjo's behalf, ordered the banquets and rituals to be held in honor of the king. Royal banquet for King Sunjo shows the banquets held at Myeongjong Hall in Changgyeong Palace. The personal life, sorry. So, detail. Oh, sorry. As you can see here, the multiple copies of the screen were produced. So one in the National Museum, one in now Samsung, like Uge. The personal life of Queen Mother Shinjeong was unfortunate. Although she gained power in the latter part of the 19th century as a regent and ruled the country from behind the screen, the paintings with the aesthetic are not shown in the exhibition. This is a 60th birthday banquet, Los Angeles County Museum of Art. Her husband, Crown Prince Hyomyoung, died before becoming king, and she outlived her own son, King Hunjong. The screen 60th birthday banquet for Queen Mother Shinjeong was painted when she wielded the power at court. Her husband, Crown Prince Hyomyoung, was a brilliant politician attempting to reform the court politics. Unfortunately, he died at age 21. The Eastern Palaces, painted circa 1828 to 30, is a masterpiece in Joseon court painting created during his regency. The Eastern Palaces is an album comprising of 16 accordion-style folding leaves. 2 of the 3 copies of the album have survived. Now, one in Korea University and the other in Donghwa University Museum, but the university version is remounted as a screen. In Jong Hall. The Eastern Palace shows the precincts of Changdeok and Changgyeong Palaces in the most realistic manner. The minute details of every building and garden are remarkable. Go through some details. Soon after Hanyang was proclaimed the capital city, Gyeongbok Palace was built as the government center and royal residence. The palace was destroyed during the Japanese invasion of Korea 1592 to 98 and was not rebuilt until the second half of the 19th century. Changdeok and Changgyeong Palaces, known together as Donggol, the eastern palaces functioned as government centers and royal residences from the early 17th century to the end of the Joseon Dynasty. Along with the pictorial records of the court ceremonies and banquets, court painters produced various screens such as the sun, moon, and 5 peaks. You can see here a throne ensemble. So what 5 peaks screen is behind the throne. And 10 longevity symbols, which decorated public offices of the king and private quarters of his immediate family. The sun, moon, and 5 peaks screen symbolized the royal power and authority and was always depicted as a symbol of the king in documentary paintings. This talk will explore how court paintings were made and used and how court painters worked and lived in late Joseon Korea. Royal Court was the major center of artistic patronage in the Joseon period, setting the agendas of production and style through direct commissions and political programs. The court-sponsored painting projects were inseparable from the establishment of the Neo-Confucian state. Many coat paintings served Confucian ideological purposes by illustrating and propagandizing the values and interests of the king and the dominant ruling Yangban group. Such paintings were intended to convey the political authority and dignity of Joseon rulers and the loyalty of their subjects. Modeled on the Painting Academy of China's Northern Song, the previous Goryeo court established the Bureau of Painting. The Joseon government further systematized the structure and operation of the Bureau of Painting under the supervision of the Board of Rights. The Bureau of Painting consisted of 20 painters ranked from the 6th to the 9th in the Joseon court bureaucracy and 15 students. The number of both painters and students increased to 30 for a total of 60 during the mid-18th century. Court painters produced various types of paintings for the king and the royal court, such as portraits of the king, meritorious subjects, and high-ranking officials, documentary paintings for court rituals, ceremonies, and events, maps and topographical landscapes for military and administrative purposes, didactic images, decorative pictures for the palaces and residences, and seasonal and New Year's paintings. The most important duty for court painters was to paint the king's portrait. Many royal portraits were burnt, damaged, and lost during Toyotomi Hideyoshi's invasion of Korea in 1592 to 98. After the war, copies of royal portraits were made for royal ancestral rituals. During the Korean War, however, most of the extant royal portraits painted before 1900 were destroyed. Only 3 portraits have survived. King Taejo and another portrait of King Taejo, photo taken in 1913, but we don't know its whereabouts now. Royal portrait of Emperor Gojong attributed to Chae Yong-shin shows a new type of royal portrait after Gojong changed the title of his kingdom to the Great Empire of Korea and adopted the title of emperor to put himself on par with Chinese, Russian, and Japanese rulers. The yellow color of the imperial robes indicates the suitors changed the status from king to emperor. Although the portrait was not done by a court painter, it was a court-sponsored portrait. The government official Chae Yong-shin was the best portraitist of the time. He was called on by the court to take up the task of painting Gojong. Along with royal portraits, one of the most important tasks of court painters was creating portraits of meritorious or distinguished officials who were considered exemplars of the Confucian virtue of royalty. The album of portraits, the 8 portraits in the Asian Art Museum of San Francisco, is an excellent example showing how meritorious subjects were honored in late Joseon Korea. The portraits in this album are all preliminary sketches. The suitors according to princely titles are significant contributors to the suppression of the Inja rebellion in 1728 in Chungcheong province, a rebellion that posed a serious threat to the state. The commemorative album of King Sukjong's entry into the Honorary Elders Assembly is a pictorial record of the ceremony and banquets for the members of the Bureau of Elder Statesmen in 1719. The Honorary Elders Assembly, or Bureau of Elder Statesmen, was an organization of eminent senior court officials who had reached rank 1 or 2 and were at least 70 years old. The king officially became a member when he reached 60 years of age. In 1719, King Sukjong turned 60. Thus, the album was created to celebrate Sukjong's entry into the Bureau of Elder Statesmen. The official ceremony was held at Sungjong Hall, the throne hall of Gyeonghi Palace. Sukjong, in return, threw a sumptuous banquet for the distinguished elders at Gyeonghyundang, another hall at Gyeonghi Palace. The album includes documents recounting all the details of the events, the king's congratulatory remarks, the elders' laudatory words to the king, and a list of participants and portraits of individual officials. The most famous of all the participants is the state councilor Kim Chang-jip, the paramount leader of the Andong Kim clan that became the most powerful political family during the first half of the 19th century. The Grand Queen Dowager Sunwon was from this family. She was the great-great-great-granddaughter of King Kim Chang-jip and the daughter of Kim Joseon, the most powerful court official in the early 19th century. It is important to note that the album leaf documenting the banquet held at Gyeonghyundang does not illustrate the person of King Sukjong despite his attendance. It was taboo to paint the king in court paintings. As a result, none of the court paintings features the image of the king. In the album leaf, there is a wood-framed screen behind the table for Sukjong. It is the sun, moon, and 5 peaks screen, the most important regalia of the king, and that manifests the Joseon political cosmology based on the theory of yin and yang and the 5 elements. The sun, moon, and 5 peaks screen symbolically represents the king himself. Wherever the king presented himself, officially, a sun, moon, and 5 peaks screen was placed behind him, and thus a screen accompanied the king on his travels. The presence of the screen behind an empty dragon armchair, sometimes paired with a royal throne or a table, indicates the king's presence. The aniconic representation of the king in court paintings is the most unique and defining characteristic of Joseon court painting. In China, you can see the Kangxi Emperor's southern inspection tour. We can see the image of Kangxi, always painted. But in Korean court paintings and documented paintings, the king was not painted at all, never. So aniconic representation of the king is very important. The king's wedding was one of the most important court ceremonies. The celebration for King Hunjong's wedding screen is a magnificent painting depicting the king's wedding to his second wife, Queen Hyojong, in 1844. The accompanying Uige was also made for extensively documenting all the details of the royal wedding. Uige are official records of special state rites and events. Uige were compiled after the completion of royal events such as weddings, the painting and copying of portraits, birthday celebrations and funeral rites, and the construction and repairing of royal tombs and palace buildings. For royal weddings, peonies screens were widely used. They were a crucial element to weddings and the rites of ancestral worship. Peonies were traditionally thought to be the king of flowers, symbolizing wealth, honor, and marital love. A single 4-panel folding screen was used for ancestral worship, while a pair of such screens was used for wedding ceremonies. The birth of the crown prince was the most important family matter for the king. Although there are some exceptions, the eldest prince succeeded the ruling king. The celebration for the birth of Crown Prince Ichok screen depicts a banquet held in honor of the birth of King Gojong's eldest surviving son, later Emperor Sunjong, the last ruler of the Joseon dynasty. The names, positions, and ranks of officials from the delivery room office are listed on each side of the painting. The scene took place at Injong Hall, the main hall of Changdeok Palace, 7 days after the prince was born. Civil and military officials officials flanked by soldiers and ceremonial guards assembled in the hall of benevolent rule to participate in a ceremony of offering congratulations. Royal processions were of great political importance to the king in demonstrating his power and authority. Royal procession to Hwasong is the best example showing how King Jeongjo used this visit to his father's mausoleum as an opportunity to enhance his rulership. As an outstanding political leader, Jeongjo maintained the policy of his predecessor, his grandfather, King Jeongjo, of balancing appointments equally among the four main political factions, thereby achieving a measure of stability and strengthening his power. He had been, however, haunted by the tragic death of his father, Crown Prince Sado, who was killed by his grandfather. Jeongjo was born in 1752 to Crown Prince Sado and Crown Princess Hong, later called Lady Haegyong, when both were 17 years of age. In 1763, when Jeongjo was a boy of 11, his father, who was suffering from mental illness, fell victim to false charges of impiety and treason, and King Jeongjo ordered his execution. Prince Sado was locked in a small wooden rice chest where he died of starvation and fever after sweltering for 8 summer days. His inhuman death cast a dark shadow on the life of Jeongjo. Throughout his life, Jeongjo remained in mourning. He could not free himself from the nightmarish memory of his father's death. All detailed accounts of Crown Prince Sado and his tragic death are recorded in the Hanjunglok, the English translation Memoirs of Lady Haegyong, now available, an autobiography by Jeongjo's mother written between 1795 and 1805. Years later, in 1776, when the son of the deceased Sado came to the throne as King Jeongjo, he ardently desired a way to honor his father, restore his reputation, and take revenge on the factions against him. Royal procession to Hwasong is a grand pictorial record of Jeongjo leading a procession of 6,000 men to Hwasong with his mother to honor her 60th birthday in 1795. But the underlying goal was to honor his father who was buried there. So here is the Seoul, and then to the south, you can see Suwon. Suwon is Hwasong. Upon Jeongjo's ascension to the throne in 1776, there were, so this is a tomb of Crown Prince Sado, and several new cities. Upon Jeongjo's ascension to the throne in 1776, there were significant developments in art and architecture, in cultural life in general. By 1789, the Joseon Dynasty under Jeongjo's reign was enjoying a period of increased stability. Court ceremony reflected the glory of Jeongjo, one of the most capable and benevolent of all Joseon kings. Jeongjo bestowed the posthumous title of Crown Prince Janghun to his father and moved his father's tomb to an elaborate mausoleum that he built in Hwasong in 1789. Jeongjo's 1795 visit to Hwasong was an act of filial piety that was political in that it forced his officials to show their loyalty to him. Jeongjo also used this visit as a means of overseeing the construction of the royal city at Hwasong. The royal protocol for the construction of Hwasong fortress, dated 1801, is one of the period's finest examples of an uigye, illustrating the buildings and fortresses of Hwasong that represented the epitome of late Joseon architecture and town planning and construction. Jeongjo constructed the new royal tomb for his father at Hwasong. The construction project was completed in 1796. When Jeongjo visited Hwasong in 1795, the construction of the city was well underway. So the next speaker will talk in detail about all of these, so I make it short. Jeongjo's 1795 visit to Hwasong resulted in the creation of multiple copies of the lavishly painted screen. He established the Royal Library, Gyujanggak, a main organ for its cultural endeavors and political reforms in Changdeok Palace to train its competent young officials. He gathered the most promising young scholars to the court, published books, and promoted new and practical ideas for better administration. He also formed a new organization of painters called Jabidaereong Hwawon, painters in waiting, placed within Gyujanggak and granted them special favor. In 1796, Jeongjo commissioned Kim Duk-shin and 6 other Jabidaereong painters to create multiple copies of the screen illustrating the 8 commemorative events related to his visit to Hwasong. So the Chinese counterpart is Daizhao. Let me go through the images quickly. Memorial service to Confucius. Award ceremony for those who passed the state examination. Birthday celebration for his mother. Banquet for elders. Military exercise. Ceremonial archery and fireworks. Royal procession back to Hanyang. Pontoon bridge. And one single, this now is a hanging scroll, but it's off the screen, so remounted as a hanging scroll from this Ryum Samsung Museum of Art. This is not working. Okay. And then Banchado and Uigye and printed books all related to his visit to Hwasong. Later copy. Court painters worked not only for the court but also for the local government. Some of the court painters were dispatched to provincial governors and military generals' offices for 2-year periods. They were given military titles and thus called painters at military posts. Welcoming ceremonies for the governor of Pyongyang attributed Kim Hong-do is one of the best examples of highlighting how court painters worked for the local government. The 3 hand scrolls documenting in detail major scenes of a welcoming ceremony for the new governor of Pyongyang, now the capital city of North Korea. So celebration, Bubyok, Pavilion, and then you can see the signature, night boating on Daedong River. Another spectacular example showing the activities of painters at military posts is the Gyeonggi Provincial Office, a 12-panel screen now in the Ryum Samsung Museum of Art. This screen presents a panoramic view of the local government's buildings and villages set against a long mountain ranges interspersed with groups of villagers and guards and soldiers and local officials. As discussed earlier, court painters in the Bureau of Painting produce various types of paintings for the royal court. They also worked at home to produce privately commissioned paintings. Some of the court painters collaborated on private commissions. It is interesting to note that although court painters worked for the government, their social status was very low. Court painters held positions in the Board of Rights from 9th to 6th rank. They were not allowed to advance to positions above the upper 6th rank. And then, in the early Joseon period, the Bureau of Painting had 20 painters. Of the 20, only 5 received regular salaries. There was, and furthermore, painters took turns to receive the salaried positions in rotation in every 6 months. For the painters who were not assigned paid positions, they were offered a small per diem and meals for the days that they worked. Thus, the economic conditions of the court painters were extremely poor. So this painting is like the Kim Hong-do, and these are all privately commissioned paintings. So like the Kim Hong-do, the best painter, the leading painter of the Jeongjo period, his masterpieces are all privately commissioned works. Taoist immortals, scenes from a journey, and pleasures of life in the countryside. So this one too, the banquet of elder officials in the garden at the Bureau of Music, that is a privately commissioned work. Let me conclude. In comparison, in China, court painters at the Painting Academy of the Qianlong period were well-to-do, both fulfilling court-sponsored projects and privately commissioned paintings. They also received many bonuses from the court, in addition to their regular salaries. In Japan, so here is Giuseppe Castiglione and Xiyang, prosperous city of Suzhou. They are very rich. Court painters are extremely rich. In Japan, leading painters of the Kano, Tosa, and Sumiyoshi schools worked for the Tokugawa shogunate as official painters, Goyo Eshi, and enjoyed high social standing and financial security. They were given samurai status and regular stipends. Relative to their contemporary Chinese and Japanese counterparts, the social status and economic conditions of Joseon court painters were extremely low. Despite their poverty, they worked hard to complete every court commissioned painting project. All the exquisitely depicted and brilliantly colored screens displayed in the Grand Style exhibition are, in fact, the products of their toil and drudgery. Court painters' days at the Bureau of Painting were always long, yet considered admirable and glorious. Despite their hard work, they took pride in working for the king. Their sweat and sighs are hidden on the surface of court paintings. Thanks to their enormous effort, the vivid pictorial records of court life have come down to us. As the exhibition in Grand Style urges us to do so, it is time to honor them and make their life more glorious. Thank you.